Morning, everyone, and welcome to this next webinar in the series. I'm Emma Maslen. I'm the CEO of inspir'em. And today I'm going to be joined by the lovely Nilofar from Confluent and also Hannah from AccessPay, two fantastic female leaders who we're going to be talking to about their implementations of MEDDIC. Before I get started, though, just a little bit about the webinar that we're going to be running today. So as we've previously mentioned, the way that these webinars work is these are recordings that are in the course content for MEDDIC Foundations. And they very much accompany the newsletters that we send out over the newsletter series. And this week's newsletter was all about how do you get good implementation in your teams as a leader for MEDDIC or MEDDPIC over time, because these things take a little bit of time. So what we're going to do today is we're going to ask some questions of our lovely guests and also offer the opportunity for you as well to ask some questions of our guests as well. We'll be taking some of those on the Q&A, and then we'll also show you a little bit around the platform and direct you to some resources. If you haven't got any questions outside of the Q&A, please let us know, because the inspir'em team are in the background and they'll happily direct you to some resources. So thanks very much for our guests for joining today. I'd love for you to do a bit of an introduction to yourselves. Tell us a little bit about your career and background. And what was your introduction to MEDDIC to start with? And then we'll get into some questions. So Hannah, if I could ask you to go first.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, so I'm Hannah Davison. I am the Sales and SDR Manager at AccessPay. We are a FinTech based in Manchester. And yeah, we've been working with Emma for a couple of years now, and she kind of introduced MEDDIC into our organization across the board, really. In every single team, we've done lots of different sessions with Emma, including like deal review stuff, and it's been really helpful. So yeah, fantastic.
Right. How many people have you got, Hannah? Just to give us a bit of an idea of sort of size of team.
We've got about 30 people in the sales teams, about 10 of us in the SDR team, and then the rest is kind of new biz, account management, pre-sales as well.
Excellent. That's great. Thanks very much for that. Great. And Nilo, did you want to provide a bit of an introduction to yourself?
Yeah, and good morning, everyone. So my name is Nilofar Sarwar. I'm a sales director at Confluent. I've been here now for almost 4 years. I have 7 direct reports, and I actually grew up in sort of the MEDDIC world. And fun fact, Emma was my first sales manager ever. So it was sort of drilled into me in the good old days. And then as an AE, as I moved to different companies, I noticed myself sort of coming in and out of it. And whenever I sort of let go of maybe sort of the rigor of MEDDIC, I did find that I could win deals, but I didn't quite know what happened, or I'd lose them and I didn't quite know what happened. Then when I moved into sort of a management role, I really saw the value of actually becoming more rigorous around that. And, you know, one of the things just off the back of that, and very fresh, yesterday we had Emma come join and do a MEDDIC training with the team, and really, really valuable.
That's great. Excellent. Yeah. And you got indoctrinated very early in your career, unfortunately, or fortunately, because you've been wildly successful. The back of that, Nilo. So great. Thanks very much. So yeah, we'll get into a few questions and just see some of the best practices that you've had in your organizations or things that you've seen in other organizations. So going to kick off with a question to Hannah. Absolutely loved working with AccessPay. Such a fun bunch of people, really good group up in Manchester. And you've been, like you say, you've been doing this for a couple of years. You had an initial implementation and then you've really kept it going, and it's been just going from strength to strength. Maybe if you could just share a little bit about, so how did you do that, and what are some of the elements that you saw from success, and maybe some tips for some of our listeners out there?
Of course. So MEDDIC was actually introduced to our organization at SMT level. So I think like having that exec sponsorship, not just from sales, but also from support and customer success and even product, it's become like a key way that we think about our customers and their needs. And then when we were introduced to Emma, who helped us to implement MEDDIC, not just kind of, as I say, for sales, but SDR, pre-sales, account management, we let those sessions kind of span out quite a long period of time, so that after each session, we could take the learnings away and then go out into our deals and our opportunities and implement some of those strategies that we'd learned. And then, you know, after at the next session, we'd kind of reflect on what had worked, what hadn't. And that just kind of kept the momentum going in between all the different sessions. And then once we kind of completed all the letters, we then started doing the deal reviews with you, Emma. And that, I think, really helped to cement all of that, because it's kind of introducing that idea that MEDDIC's a common language. And so in the deal reviews, the team would each kind of present a deal, and we'd examine that under a MEDDIC lens. And yeah, we kind of first started that with you supporting us, didn't we, Emma? But then we've just kind of carried that on, and that's continued. You know, it's something that we do now religiously each week. So it's kind of reinforcing the idea of MEDDIC, and it's just, yeah, how we think about our deals now. And yeah, and then in terms of a top tip, I think like using MEDDIC then in one-to-ones. Emma, I think you sent me a sheet ages ago called MEDDIC for Managers, and it's just got a list of some like qualification questions that you can use in one-to-ones. And it's like a double whammy, because obviously it's reinforcing MEDDIC again. It's helping the team prep for their next calls by using MEDDIC. But then it's also helping me to qualify using MEDDIC so that I can then forecast more accurately. So that's been really helpful for me.
Yeah, no, that's great. And actually the deal coaching was really interesting because we did it slightly unusually, but although now become best practice for us, because we did some weekly deal reviews and we sort of took different deals, but we also had some deals that kept coming back. So actually what the team then saw was they saw the progress from the week before. And then fantastically, those deals closed, and it was a really celebrated win across the sales floor as well. One of the things that we've seen in other organizations as well is getting those peer-to-peer deal reviews then run by future leaders, because then it takes away so much of the inspection. It's more best practice, and it's run by people who could then be future leaders, taking away a little bit of the load away from the leaders as well. So that's great. Nilo, any thoughts on that? Anything that you've heard there from Hannah that you think's interesting as you sort of reflect on great implementations that you've seen?
Yeah, absolutely. And first, I'd love to get my hands on that MEDDIC for Managers sheet. Great. And Hannah, I am a bit envious of, you know, the way your organization is thinking about MEDDIC and how it's been implemented sort of top down. I mean, if we're truthful, we have MEDDIC and we have the Salesforce fields, but I don't think we have sort of the discipline and the rigor to actually do it every time and to think about it in MEDDIC. So there's a hard sell and a soft sell around it. And the hard sell is really to get, you know, the exact buy-in and to show that there is value, not just for sales, but for all the sort of teams that touch the sales cycle. And then the soft sell is really to get the AEs to truly believe in it and buy into it, because they see how valuable it is when they're qualifying deals. And one of the things that I've started to do, we do deal reviews or deal clinics, and we do them as a team. So there is a deal, there's a presentation deck where it has a MEDDIC sort of qualification, and we all sort of chip in and brainstorm and think about it. But what has been really helpful to get people to believe in the value of like having a champion, testing a champion, is to then point out after they've closed the deal or had a really good meeting. It's like, do you know why that happened? Did you see the behavior there? And yesterday, one of my AEs said, it's like, oh, I knew it was important to have a champion, but she had an amazing meeting with an EB. She came out of it being incredibly invigorated and did all the right things with a champion. And she's like, oh my God, this makes it so much more fun. So having those kind of like proof points and then being able to then extrapolate that, share that with the team has been really, really helpful in getting them to buy in.
Yeah, absolutely. We talk a lot about trying to get a few ambassadors, like people who have lived and breathed it, they've embraced it, they've got the stories, because the sales floor is more likely to listen to those people than any external trainer or their manager. Unfortunately, they are going to listen to their peers. So if you've got a few good myths and legends, obviously we try and tell as many of those great stories as possible. But if you can get a few of those out of the team, then that's great. So so question to Nilo then. So, you know, it sounds like it's quite a commitment here because there's lots to do and sort of slightly changing your operating rhythm to get the implementation of MEDDIC or MEDDPIC. But why do it as a leader? What's it given you as a leader? And certainly for somebody that grew up with it and maybe not in an organization that's fully embraced it, but embracing it a little, what does it give you?
I think it really helps understand sort of the science behind the sale. So it doesn't become this black box, this art, this like, I don't know how I lost or won the deal. And then as a leader, it really helps me to focus the coaching with the team. And then it helps us all communicate widely around the organization, what is happening. And for everybody that touches the client to be thinking along these ways, they are thinking around, what metrics are we trying to capture here? What are the decision criteria that I'm engaged, whether you're in services or SCs or CSM. So it just helps, and it's such a cliche, but it is so true. It helps standardize what we're doing, and it helps understand and find out how to fill the gaps.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Hannah, that plays into your point about helping you with the forecast as well. So just giving you that clearer view of where you need to be.
Yeah, definitely. And what you said about the CSMs, Nilo, I think like that having the CSMs be trained in MEDDIC has really like changed the conversations that they're having with the customers. Because obviously in the SaaS world, like it can become a really technical conversation with CSMs. And actually it just, by using MEDDIC, it really brings it back to value all the time. And then the kind of CSMs are uncovering like new opportunities for the AM team, like without realizing by accident, and it's making the customers feel kind of more valued as well throughout their journey as a customer.
Yeah, absolutely. We see quite a lot of CSMs when they haven't had any sort of sales training. Like you say, they get really boxed in those sort of technicalities, and it's almost like we've forgotten all the people that were involved in the sales cycle in the beginning. But also, there's a benefit to customers to keeping us very boxed in because they don't want salespeople roaming all over their accounts all the time. So, but then we need to try and break out of that and try and get as broad as we can. Okay, great. So if anybody's got any questions, feel free to put them into the Q&A and we'll field those. So a question to both of you, and we'll go to Nilo first. So how do you keep it alive? So we've talked about some of the ideas about sort of continuing that enablement, continuing some of those best practices and introducing new ideas. But how do you keep this fresh rather than it just feeling like the sales manager's just banging on about the same old thing?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of things you can do. I think it helps that everybody thinks along this. So the deal clinics where everybody's chipping in seems to really work because then it's sort of ingrained. The other thing is like getting other people outside of the company to come and talk about it has been really valuable. Like one of the things that came off the back of the training you delivered, Emma, yesterday was like, oh, it's so refreshing to not have the word Kafka used at all, because, what we do is a, very technical sell. And then if you have your internal enablement people, it's very easy to fall within sort of those constructs of what you're selling, your product, it intimately. It's really refreshing to have somebody externally come, and then sharing success stories. When you have had, whether you win or lose that deal, when you've done your MEDDIC really well, when you've captured those metrics, those things that can, further your business case that were such a big of a, challenge to you, when you manage to capture that and then you can like propagate that, I mean, that keeps it alive and it makes it real for people.
Yeah, absolutely. Hannah, anything to add there?
Yeah, I think like kind of what you just said, Nilo, the success stories, like it's when people feel the win, like they feel the win from using MEDDIC, that keeps it alive because they're like, well, that worked. I want to do that again. So I guess them feeling that win, sharing that win with the team in the deal review, those experiences of taking a deal through the deal review process on the journey kind of throughout the sales process and then seeing the win at the end was that real life example for the rest of the team to say, look, actually, this is going to work for you, put these things into place and you should see the same successes. So I think that and then I'm also waiting to get my hands on one of your coaching cards, Emma, and I'll definitely be implementing that in some of our sales meetings.
Yeah, they should be arriving into the office today, actually, because like earlier in the week, so you have those. And I haven't got a pack on me, so I should be but we have got some coaching cards. So if anybody's interested in those, where what we've done is we've tried to almost just encapsulate some of the great questions you can ask as a leader, but in a pack of cards format so that people don't get too stumped in deal reviews when they're trying to adopt the language and they can't quite think of how they're supposed to ask the question. But yeah, they're just a little fun addition that we have for deal reviews. But yeah, absolutely, that's something that we have that will help that implementation. One thing I would just say, actually, also that we've seen with great sales teams, just thinking about some of the things you just said there, Hannah, was, there was a level of vulnerability from the team that they were happy to be coached. They were happy for somebody to say, really, is that person your champion? Are you sure? How do you know? Have you tested this? And actually for them to come back and say, actually, no, they're not my champion. I need to do something about that. And there was a couple of people in the deal reviews where they went and sought out somebody else and worked really hard to sort of turn that around. So then they came back and said, yeah, I have got a champion now, different person. And like you say, then they saw some amazing success. Okay. So a couple of questions. Oh, wow. We've got loads of questions in the Q&A. I'll have to have a look at those. So a couple of questions I've got. So I'm going to put this one to Hannah, first of all, because I'm going to try and get through all the questions. So let's see how we go. Hannah, what do you think the letter is that the team struggle with the most when you think about MEDDIC?
E, economic buyer. I think for us, getting access to the economic buyer is the biggest challenge that I'm seeing at the minute. And yeah, it's something that we're working on every week, but I guess it comes back to then champion, right? Having a strong champion who can give you that access. But sometimes we're finding, even if we've got a champion who's saying, yeah, we'll put you in touch with the EB, it's not coming off, and we're not, getting that meeting. So that's probably our biggest struggle.
Yeah, we did some work with Nilo's team yesterday about all of the objections that you hear from a champion to get to economic buyer, but also just getting the team to practice their pitch. Like, what is your pitch to somebody to say, hey, you've not got enough power to get this done. Can we go and meet mum and dad? Like, what do you say to them and how do you pitch that? And just trying to get them to just pass the words through their lips is absolutely very important. Nilo, did you want to add anything to that point, or we can move on to another question?
No, you can move on to another question.
Great. Okay. So one of the other questions that we've got is, so question for you then, Nilo, is how are you going to measure the impact of the MEDDIC adoption? So you've already started some of this already. Have you been measuring it to date because you've been doing it on your own? How will you be measuring it in the future?
Yeah, it's actually a really great question and something I have to actually think about. We've had historically quite a good win rate once it comes to best case commit. One of the things that I suppose would help with that is the sales cycles. Can we shorten the duration of the sales cycles, either qualify in or out, which has been something that we've historically, it's been like 6 to 9 months. Could we actually shorten that maybe to like 3 to 6 months, whether it's qualifying in or out? That would be probably one measure for me to do that. And then the other thing is just being able to post win or lose, articulate the why. Why did this customer actually win? How intimately did we understand, or why did we lose this? How intimately do we understand the pain that we're trying to solve? And were we then able to attribute some business criteria to that? As in, whether trying to reduce, was it a TCO thing? Was it an ROI thing? Cost, risk, shareholder commitment, all those things that you were talking about. So that would be another way. But it's a great question. I probably have to give it some further thought. Open to suggestions as well from anyone who's had practice.
Absolutely. So one of the ones that we recommend to people in the very beginning is what's activity doing? So what's the activity level of the team? Because usually we do enough to scare people into thinking, actually, are you meeting with people enough? Are you meeting your champion enough? Are you meeting them enough one-on-one? Are you? Because without those touch points, how can you qualify and how can they like you, right? How can they see value in what you're doing? So I'd expect activity to be one of the very first things to measure. Obviously, over time.
Actually, that gave me an idea. Maybe along with activity, are you diversifying the activity within the account as well? Are you talking to more than just 1 or 2 or 3 people that you're comfortable talking with? It's a great suggestion.
Yeah, absolutely. So net new contacts is another one, particularly for CSMs. Going back to the CSM point, when we work with CSMs, one of the things that we try and get them to challenge themselves on is how many new people have they spoken to this week? What different types of personas have they spoken to? Okay. So on the CSM theme, we have another question. This one is to Hannah. So in some organizations, culturally, we see that CSMs see themselves as customer champions and don't want to be seen as very salesy. How does the value of focus help them to be, do they feel salesy now because they've been through some MEDDIC training, or are they still very focused on customer outcomes?
Well, I've never asked them if they feel salesy, but I don't think that they do. I think that they see MEDDIC as being focused on customer outcomes because it is, right? Like the whole point of it is to understand the customer better, to give the customer a better experience. And when I guess it's positioned to a CSM like that, then surely they're just going to be on board because, that's what they're interested in, making the experience better for the customer, and you can do that through MEDDIC.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because we quite often we obviously encourage people to don't use the terminology that we're suggesting in MEDDIC. Never ask anybody who their economic buyer is because they'll just look like you're crazy. But it is a really good point around the customer should, of course, see the benefit because you should be more targeted in your approach. You should be more efficient in the way that you're approaching them. You should be giving them more value because we talk about champion building a lot. We're focused on customer outcomes. That we're trying to make things a smoother process for everybody. And again, sometimes we forget that. We call it sales qualification. So we think it's just for us. But actually, it's really not if we do it in the right way. So yeah, it shouldn't feel too salesy. Okay. Okay. So, so we have a question here for Nilo, which is in an organization where there isn't company-wide adoption, how do you get the team to influence each other sort of internally and also the wider organization? Because presumably, Nilo, you've got pre-sales teams and other people who haven't been through the training. How do you influence that adoption without seeming like you're sort of pushing the cult out there?
Yeah, and I think this is where it is a framework, right? And it's a methodology, but the questions that it seeks to answer are things that everybody would want to know, and I think that's how you bring them back to it, right? Like a sales engineer would like to understand what pain, what criteria, technical criteria they have. They would like to understand, where is their impact going to be? Same with CSM. So I actually don't think that you have to, push it as MEDDIC, but you can push it as like, we all want to find the answers to these questions, because at the end of the day, it's going to inform all of us in our job, in our activities. So I don't think it'll be this has been my experience. It hasn't been a hard thing to get people on board with.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, we're just talking about curiosity, aren't we? And how can it be a bad thing if what we're doing is driving more questions? Because, great, if we ask a question and we know the answer, is amazing. But one of your team said to me yesterday, when do you know that you've done enough for each letter? And I said, well, that's a fallacy because you're never going to get there, right? So just know that actually there's always going to be something that you don't know. It's always going to be something customers won't disclose. But then that's great because our job is revenue with control. The more risk we find, the more chance we've got to do something about it. So so that'll be an interesting one. Bless them. They're going to be working really hard on trying to get as much information as possible following what we did yesterday. Great. Well, thank you both so much for coming on the webinar today. Any final thoughts before we finish up? Hannah, if I come over to you first of all, anything from yourself?
I guess everyone at AccessPay calls me like the MEDDIC's biggest fan, just because I've really seen value across the board from us implementing MEDDIC. And I think having people who have the energy towards MEDDIC in your organization is really, really helpful and valuable because that's what keeps it alive. So, yeah.
No, that's great. Absolutely. So we need to get you a badge.
I know.
A hat for the office. Absolutely. We'll think about that for the next drinks thing. Excellent. Very good. And Nilo, over to yourself. Anything, final thoughts from you?
Yeah, actually, the question that Hannah was given around, is it too salesy, kind of made me chuckle, because I would say that, what does that mean, salesy, right? We're hardly sort of the Glengarry, Glen Ross crowd here, right? So what does that mean? And I genuinely believe that if you do something like MEDDIC, you will see that it is not about pushing. It is not about trying to do an aggressive sale. It is actually about coming in a really collaborative way together with your customers and all the people that will touch your deal to understand, to seek answers, get questions, or get questions, seek answers to questions that you have to further everybody, including the customer.
Yeah, absolutely. We were having a little joke yesterday about how British we are, and certainly like salespeople, how apologetic we are about being salespeople. Last time I checked, they're the jobs that we've chosen, right? So actually, you just need to just get over the point. And our customers as well they are professional buyers. That's what they do. They are there to deliver value to their business. And providing it's not about your contract and it's about their value, why wouldn't they have that conversation? Amazing. Great. Thanks very much, ladies, for joining us this morning. So just a couple of other things from me then, just to finish up. So if you haven't had a chance to have a look around the community yet, then please do. How you can do that is you can look at the membership login, just click on that. If you have forgotten your password, you can just forget your password and we'll send you an email just to get you logged back in. You've got two options when you go into the community. You can go into the course content, which contains all these videos. And then also you can have a look at the community and ask a question of a coach. So our coaches are all online. And if you or your teams are thinking about how they implement some of these ideas, please feel free to ask a question. And also the back end, our team are also putting new resources into the platform all the time around the implementation. So some of the things that, one of the ones that Hannah mentioned today around the qualification for managers, we'll make sure that that goes in there as well. So any questions, then please do send us an email. And thanks very much for joining today. And we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one, where we're going to be talking about what's the difference between all of the spellings and which one's right for you. So all of the variety of choice you've got there. So we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Thanks very much.